It's officially story time in Boston as Trevor Story got introduced as a Boston Red Sox today. What's up, everybody? My name is Jake Ignaszewski, and I'm the Massachusetts Pirates team insider. And welcome back to the Locked On Red Sox podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen every single day. As always, I am joined by my co-host, NESN writer Lauren Campbell. And Lauren and I had the opportunity to be joined by a very special guest, Chris Henrique, who is the founder of Beyond the Monster and also co-host of Into the Triangle podcast. And during this episode, we sort of break down the Trevor Story press conference, talk a little bit about some interesting things that we got from the press conference, as well as touched on some of the first cuts of spring training. Talked a little bit about where we see some of those players playing during the 2022 season and if they really have a future in Boston. So buckle up for this episode because it's definitely a fun one.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. We are here with a very special guest. He's the founder of Beyond the Monster Network and the host of the Into the Triangle podcast, Chris Henrique. So how are we doing today, Chris?
I'm good, guys. Excited to be on the show and talk a little bit of Red Sox.
Absolutely, man. So we saw the Red Sox unfortunately get their first loss of spring training of this season, 10-4 to the Twins. And right before that game started, there was this very exciting press conference of new second baseman. It's weird saying that. Trevor Story getting introduced. So what was your initial reaction of that whole press conference?
So I woke up this morning and I saw the tweet from the Red Sox finally announcing that Trevor Story was going to be a member of the Red Sox. And first up, it was more relief. I know leading up the last couple of days, the reason why it's taken probably as long as it has been to announce him has been more roster related versus anything else. But, sometimes being a skeptical Boston fan, you have that doubt that starts to creep into the back of your mind. Could there be something wrong medically? Is there a hang up? Could something have happened that, we don't know about yet? And then, to finally see that tweet come down and it was finally announced, it was that relief and then that excitement. You know what I mean? Like, it's, for me, the last time I got really excited about a player that the Red Sox signed was Manny Ramirez. And I remember it was like 11 o'clock at night. And this is before, like, you could go on Twitter and you can do and find out your news just at the drop of the hat. I remember I was watching NESN and they announced that, Manny Ramirez was going to sign with the Red Sox. And it was like 11 at night. And I was so excited. I woke my parents up. And then, so I had that same, and again, they're not the same player, but I still had that same excitement level because it felt like the Red Sox, they were players again. And they were players again in getting someone who can come here to Boston and make a huge difference. And I was even more excited about the Chaim Bloom crowd. Like, this is really something to go ahead and say to that group of people, like, you know what, he really does want to spend money. He does want to improve this team. So I was ecstatic on that. I probably shot off 15 tweets in a matter of like 30 minutes right after that signing. So then the signing was announced. So excitement, relief, and then the press conference, that was great.
Was there anything that stood out to you in particular, whether it was something maybe Story said or Sam Kennedy or Chaim Bloom?
Yeah, actually, when Trevor Story said he's the second baseman this year, like, that comment resonated with me. I screen recorded the press conference because I wanted to go back and watch it again. And I wanted to make sure that I heard that right. So I stopped listening to the press conference for a quick second. I went back to it. I'm like, well, that's really interesting in the way that he put that, saying I'm the second baseman this year. Leads me to kind of, you want to surmise and speculate, well, does that mean he's either shortstop moving forward going into 2023? what conversations are being had behind the scenes, and we have no idea about where are the Red Sox working on something with Xander to pay him as a shortstop and then slide him over somewhere else. So I thought that comment was really telling out of the whole piece. And I liked really how Chaim Bloom kind of humanized Trevor Story versus I think as baseball fans, we're so caught up into, what did he hit last year? What did he hit away from Coors Field? And how many home runs did he hit? And here's this spray chart that I've seen 45 times on Twitter and the amount of home runs that he would hit at Fenway. Whereas Chaim, he was trying to, as a fan, make us think a little bit more globally about the player, which I thought was nice. And there's more to Trevor Story than him potentially hitting 35 bombs for the Sox this year and playing an outstanding second base. So those are the two, for me, major, takeaways from that press conference. I love the fact too that the players were all there for it, seeing those pictures after the fact of just huddled around together. I think, Chaim really sent a message, that front office sent a message to those players by saying, what you guys did last year, we don't think it's a fluke. And, we want to continue to invest into the on-field product. And here's the next phase of that.
I love that you said about Chaim Bloom humanizing Trevor Story, because one of the first things Story said was him and his family are so excited to be here. This was the right move for him and his family. He talked to his family about moving to second base. It was constant family. And we've mentioned this before, how that people kind of forget that these are human beings. They have lives like you and I. They have families. They have relationships. Some of them have children. And that is a whole other thought process they need to go into, because if Trevor Story stinks in Boston, he's going to know it, and he's going to know it right away. And I think that's when you have that humanizing factor, it shows that this front office genuinely cares about their players.
Yeah, and I think that's got to be something as we as sports fans need to kind of evolve with, and as I said a little while ago, we're so wrapped up in really what does the back of that baseball card say about player X, whereas there is so much more to it. Even the lead up of, Story potentially signing with the Red Sox and just, multiple different Twitter accounts saying, various different things. For example, there was one talking about how he's from Texas and the Texas Rangers are the favorites, and started to give a little bit of insight about the family and everything else. And I think those are pieces that we don't want to look at. Whereas the second, if a player doesn't sign, we immediately blame the front office. Well, it wasn't enough money, or Chaim didn't want to spend. It's a two-way street. That player needs to want to come here as well. That player needs to want to be a part of moving a family to the city of Boston or the outskirts of Boston. And, it's a major move for them, despite how much money that these guys are going to ultimately make. So, and I hope that the Red Sox continue to bring in those style of players too. Bring in people that are good quality players, because the last thing that you want to be as a sports fan of any team is, I'm still going to root for the laundry that they're going to wear. It's sometimes really hard to swallow a player that may or may not deserve to wear your team's, logo across their chest. And I think, there's probably some instances that we can immediately think about throughout the country right now where there's players that have moved on to other teams, and there's fans that are probably passionate about a specific, we'll call it football team, and they have a new quarterback that they may not be the most craziest about right now. And it's that dilemma that you have to deal with as a fan. You know what I mean? So I'm happy that the Red Sox are not putting us in that position, hopefully.
That's something that I've noticed that Chaim has done with every single signing that he's made and I don't really think I've seen any general manager or president of football or baseball operations really be as open as he is about sort of the background of the character of the person. We usually see teams wanting to get guys on what they're going to do specifically on the field. But with Chaim, he even talked about it, with Kike when he brought Verdugo over, just how their personality is going to fit within the clubhouse, how that energy is going to help motivate the team, and how that ultimately helps them win on the field.
Yeah, if you look at just even going back to the Verdugo piece, just here's someone that he has fit in so nicely within what the Red Sox, that clubhouse. He's just so fiery and passionate. And, for me, when it came to sports, like I've that ship has sailed. So, but when I played, whatever I would play, heart and passion was always triumphed over the talent aspect of it. And with Verdugo, I feel like I can connect and relate to that. Now he's got the talent to back that up, but I can appreciate, that fire, that intensity. I mean, we got to see it last year when that Yankee fan threw the ball and hit him in the back at Yankee Stadium, and just how fired up and how, I mean, granted, I would be the same exact way if someone, fired a fastball at my back while I was playing left field, but you could just see it with his teammates, what the teammates say, and even just down to the most basic thing, like with Plawecki, and just having that creative mindset of like, hey, I'm going to bring the team together we're going to do a laundry car, and we're going to throw the player in there, and we're going to, have fun with that piece, So I think if fans, and I know a lot of our fans do, Red Sox fans, we're so passionate, and we are a very smart fan base when it comes to understanding our players. There's so much that you can learn about these guys and who they are off the field that just completely like enhances what you get to see as a player. And I think for me, it was probably why because with blogging and podcasting, as much as I've been doing for the last 2.5 years, you begin to learn about these guys. It made that past, off fall, where they're in the postseason, so much more special, and just to feel that intensity and just that fire that our fans are seeing in. So, I hope that, like I said, I hope the Red Sox team to put a premium on getting those style of players.
Yeah, and I said this about last year's team, how even though the JD Martinez's, the Xander Bogaerts, and the Rafael Devers, they obviously had great seasons. It was those quote unquote smaller guys where you saw that big pop. You saw Christian Arroyo and even Jose Iglesias, who was brought in September, couldn't even play in the playoffs, was just chilling in the dugout with them, just hyping them up and just being a good teammate, even though he couldn't play. Like, it's guys like that make a big difference, not just on the field, but in the clubhouse. And when you have good chemistry, that's gonna translate to the field.
I hope that you are enjoying our conversation so far with Chris Henrique. But first, before we get into segment 2, I just wanted to take a second to talk to you about BetOnline. It's that time of year again, as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. I've actually used BetOnline a few times, and it's actually one of the easiest betting sites that I've used. And they have some great odds, great information. If you're somebody who doesn't really know a lot about betting, they have a lot of resources on their website to help you understand what you're actually spending your money on. So if you're going to trust any betting site, definitely trust betonline.net. And I also want to thank you guys so much again for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And also make sure to go out and check out the rest of the podcasts on the Locked On Network. Some of them, like Locked On A's, Locked On Astros, Locked On Blue Jays, they're all doing a great job of covering the sport of baseball, as well as look at some of the other ones, Locked On Bengals, because Locked On Network is the #1 spot to get all your sports information.
And I think it's probably a big reason too that it helped catapult them as far as they did. I mean, the other piece too, and Chaim even said this in the press conference today, which is, for me, when you hear Chaim Bloom talk, he's very like cryptic and he's very scripted what he says. But I also found where he said, like, we barely made the playoffs. And, with him kind of just like saying that, like, we barely got in, granted, well, it's the truth. And we got to see that. For him to acknowledge that. And then, he basically said, to me, like, hey, we barely got in. I got to put a premium on getting this style of player. And you can already just see it too with the pictures and the Instagram and all these videos of just the chemistry that the guys are already forming with Trevor Story, and just the photos of just seeing him and Xander do batting practice together, and then that double play duo the combination that they had with that video came out. So the chemistry piece is so huge. I am going to miss Iglesias though.
Me too.
Just his glove, and he's just a fiery little player. Ironic that he's going to go and replace Trevor Story at shortstop out in Colorado. So I mean, who knows? I mean, the Rockies they're trying to put together, a club again, but maybe if he's available and the Red Sox are in it and they need another utility infielder down the stretch, maybe Heim can get a Iglesias reunion again.
All that we can hope and pray for is that he does it before the September sort of cutoff, so he can actually play in the playoffs. But yeah, one thing with Iglesias is I bet you guys saw this of him helping out Christian Arroyo with there was like a bunt situation, and he was in the dugout helping him sort of figure out a better way that he could have done it. Like that sort of like teammate stuff is great to see, and as well as I thought it was really cool hearing about how many players from the Red Sox reached out to Trevor to try and recruit him. And one narrative that has really sort of frustrated me throughout this process, and I get it, it makes sense, is the Trevor Story against Xander Bogaerts. That Trevor Story is here to take Xander Bogaerts' position, and that they are in some sort of competition. And you saw some people on Twitter like, why would Xander try and recruit his replacement? But at the end of the day, Xander is essentially the captain without the C on his jersey, and he wants to win as all of the rest of us.
The Xander versus Trevor Story piece, that's for the Boston media to be able to generate and have content and be able to have something to talk about, and it's going to be turned into something that probably shouldn't be a thing. Right. The Red Sox, they need to, first and foremost, they need to get Devers squared away, and then in the process, maybe try to link the two together and try to be able to get both those guys and those deals done. So at least from that fan perspective, we can stop doing and creating that narrative of Bogaerts versus Story. For me, I just want to see both those guys go out there, have career years, build that chemistry, turning double plays, playing the infield together. Trevor Story will be able to, spell some time for Xander when he gets a day off here or there over at shortstop. So hopefully, that conversation will die down. But what's ended up happening is the first game that Xander goes and boots a ball. You know what I mean? It's going to be that conversation. Well, why is Xander playing shortstop? Whereas like last year, I don't really remember there being much conversation on, we really need to replace Xander Bogaerts at shortstop from a defensive perspective. Like, I don't really, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm forgetting something, but I don't really recall that being a conversation. All of a sudden now, everyone on Twitter who, as an example, who is deep into the analytics, they're giving you all of these different advanced metrics on why he shouldn't be there. And it's like, well, you weren't shouting that out last year. Again, at least to my knowledge. So I just want to see these two guys build some chemistry together, have a good year offensively, and see this team win a World Series. Let everything else settle itself.
Yeah.
I think that's the funniest thing is that Xander Bogaerts can just move over narrative. And I know he played third base when he came over or when he debuted with the Red Sox in 2013. But he's been the shortstop. And I know that when you dive into the analytics, he's not the best defensive shortstop there is. But what makes you think from the position he's played for the last 9 seasons that he's just going to be fantastic at third or at second? And it's just the weirdest thing because same when you were saying, like, I don't know if I missed something, that was me too. I'm like, was there ever a conversation about Xander Bogaerts leaving shortstop? No, there never was.
The biggest conversation that we heard last year, and I think could probably fall under the same umbrella, is when Rafi Devers, he's not the greatest third baseman. And I remember watching NBC Sports Boston, and Lou Merloni was on, and Lou was saying, well, put a first baseman glove on and throw him to the other side of the diamond. And it's like, obviously, Lou, more in tap, more connected, but I'm just thinking like, man, if it's that easy, wouldn't the Sox already have done it? You know what I mean? Like, or what makes you think that Rafi can go and just go from the hot corner and play first base like Uke did? You know what I mean? Like, Uke made that transition no problem. So, what's to say that he can go ahead and do that? I think that it's just like we're not playing MLB The Show where we can just go ahead and take Xander Bogaerts and switch his position and throw him at second base and hope that the AI of the game can take care of the rest. You know what I mean? I'm sure over time Xander Bogaerts can probably become an adequate second baseman. To me, some of the random that I'm hearing that fans are saying, well, stick him in the outfield. Well, that's to me craziness.
Yeah.
I thinking about him being as a designated hitter, I don't see him in that light just yet. And, maybe that's something that's a few years from now, but because I think let these guys play the positions they're going to play this year and let's see what happens.
I think that's the only thing you can do is just let this year play out because there's so much unknown going into 2023. And who knows, maybe Devers will be the DH. I've been kind of advocating for that depending on JD Martinez and his season. But again, that depends on JD Martinez. And you can't just go flip-flopping stuff in the middle of a season unless it's not working and then you're going to try it. Like if you're so far out of it by July, go crazy. Do whatever you want. But to start the season, put everyone where they should be and let it play out. Give it, 10, 20, 30 games to see how this chemistry evolves and stop making these pretend narratives and then be like, I know how to make the team better. Like, okay, great.
If they want to make the team better, I think the first thing would be is, I think we need to get another right fielder and continue to add more depth within that from a pitching standpoint. Versus focusing on whether Xander Bogaerts should be playing shortstop this year for the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I mean, even talking about sort of like the transition from third to first, I mean, Dalbec was a first and third baseman throughout the minors, and we saw how difficult it was for him to transition. And also like when thinking about Story, transitioning to second, I found it was interesting. His confidence in how comfortable he believes that he will be over there. I mean, what's nice is that he did have a lot of experience over there with the different shifts from last season. But, tomorrow we're going to be 2 weeks away from opening day. And so the Sox got a ticking time clock to get Trevor Story opening day ready. Obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if he's been in the cage, been on some fields, getting ready, getting his body ready for the season to start. But it's really going to be interesting to see how he does transition. But I thought it was also interesting to hear Cora and Heim also mention that they think that the altitude from Colorado and the change to the new scenery of Boston and in the new sort of air in Boston is going to be a little bit tougher than that position change.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's going to be something where from his standpoint, it's the only place that he's played over the course of his career. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be a massive, impact to his overall game. I think just the biggest piece is going to be is for me looking at it would be is can he play an effective second base? You know what I mean? Like that's my biggest focus out of the whole piece. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a change from the perspective going from Coors Field to Boston, but hopefully, plus, our weather's a lot different too. That's out here, but hopefully he'll be able to adapt quickly and, we start to see him launch some stuff into the monster.
Yeah, that's the ultimate dream. And some more spring training news aside from the Trevor Story stuff was we had our first round of cuts today. So you saw Brian Mata, Jeter Downs, Jay Groom, Josh Winkowski, and Connor Siebold option to Worcester. No real surprise in those cuts. But now that Story is going to second base and play second base for the foreseeable future, what do you think that means for Jeter Downs?
As they've begun to continue to get more depth within the middle infield, within the system, I've kind of felt, for me anyway, that he would end up being another piece at some point that would be traded off. I just don't see that long-term fit for him here in Boston between, drafting Marcelo Meyer, you have Nick York, obviously Ryan Fitzgerald's having a great spring, but he's not part of that conversation. But I think there's other players, though, that could come up on a short term, like a Fitzgerald, that could come in and help out. I more so see, unless he can transition to somewhere else on the diamond, I more see him in a piece that can maybe bring them back another arm. I felt that for a while that the Red Sox should try to go out and get one of those two arms from Oakland, either Frankie Montas or Sean Manaea. And I feel that Jeter Downs would be a good piece in that package. I also think that Jay Groom would be a bad piece in that package either. I think that they're heavy on left-handed arms now, but so yeah, I just don't see a long term with Jeter Downs here in Boston.
Me either. We saw how much he struggled offensively. He was able to hit home runs, but he wasn't able to get on base. Having a sub 200 batting average, not only in Worcester, but also in the Arizona Fall League. And you already know, I can already see it now. People on Twitter, well, Chaim Bloom lost the Mookie Betts trade. Well, just to remind you, we got Alex Verdugo, and same with Connor Wong as well. So,
yeah, I mean, Verdugo is the the cornerstone piece of that, and he's now one of those players that's being built around for this new Red Sox core. And again, who knows if you're able to package up Downs into a package to get you something else for the roster that's going to help you this year and maybe beyond. That's still part of that Mookie Betts umbrella of that trade. Connor Wong, he's going to a backup catcher. Maybe he replaces Plawecki next year in that standpoint. Very small sample size we got to see of Wong last year, and he played pretty well. Had a couple of decent hits. I think he had like 2 doubles. So I don't look at it as the Red Sox ever have lost that trade. I think Chaim was in such a tough position taking over that team, having face of a franchise that you weren't going to be able to re-sign. Oh, by the way, there was also the Alex Cora stuff that was going on, and having to deal with that piece. Like Chaim had a very, very challenging first off season with the Red Sox. So I don't see him as lost that deal whatsoever.
We had a lot of fun on Wednesday's episode talking about who our breakout candidates could be. There's a lot of good names on this Red Sox team that could be breakout candidates. So for 2022, who is yours?
So I would speaking of Verdugo, I'd like to see him take that next step here in Boston. I'd like to see more power from him as well. There was a points last year where he would, when he got hot, he was hot, and then when he was cold, he was cold. So just getting those consistencies back. But I think that Verdugo could take that next step. Offensively, I think we've already seen what he's done defensively. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's played a really good left field. It'll be interesting to see how he plays right field if he gets some time that's over there. I think another player though that we might be down on that I could probably be that breakout offensive player is going to be Buffy Dahlbeck. And I say that from the standpoint of he had a miserable start to the beginning of last season, to the point where they had to go out and address first base and address getting another bat with getting Schwarber. And then it was the second that they got him, it's like the light switch flipped inside of him and he went on an absolute tear. So I would love to see Dahlbeck go and take that next step, because I feel like there's motivation to do that. Cassis is, he's on the doorstep of being called up. When he gets called up, if I'm Dahlbeck, where do I play? I could play some second. I'm willing to do that. He could play some shortstop. He's willing to do that. He's going to get some reps in the outfield. So I think there's that pressure to go ahead and show like, hey, I belong here. And, I as much as I think that he could also be a trade candidate, I think that there's a reason and motivation to be a breakout candidate for this team. So I think that he's probably, out of everybody, for me, the Sox breakout one for this year.
Makes sense. Something with Verdugo that I actually read yesterday that I found interesting is, I'm in agreement with you that we need to see more power out of him. But something that I found interesting that Alex Cora said is we don't want to go down the route that we went with Andrew Benintendi of him trying to hit 30 home runs. Like if Verdugo is able to hit 300 to above 300, 15 to 20 home runs, like 100 RBIs, he's like, I'll be happy with that. But one person that I've seen you repeatedly mentioned as potentially having a breakout season on Twitter is outfielder Jaren Duran. Obviously, once he got called up, wasn't able to acclimate too easily to the MLB pitching. But I wanted you to have the opportunity to speak on your thoughts on that. Yeah,
so I think that Duran, he's such an interesting case because, first off, like there was the immense hype that we put on as Red Sox fans of any player that's within the system. And, we get to see those very short 20, 30-second clips on Twitter of these guys launching bombs at Polo Park, and it gets the excitement that's there. We got to see that sample size too when he got called up. He's super fast. He's versatile. He can play all three of those outfield positions. I just, and then reading Chris Cotillo's article on how he basically stopped having fun. And, to see that and actually to kind of like read that, it was like super disheartening because like, here's a player that has everything that's going for him. That's, and the future is bright that's ahead for him. So I'm hoping that he can kind of turn that piece around because the Red Sox, like they could benefit from having someone that can, just how fast that he is. That's not something that we've typically seen them use speed as part of their game. So being able to use that in the outfield, being able to use that at the plate. We got to see that clip last year. That I wasn't like the inside the park home run where he was jamming around those bases at Fenway. Duran, have him start down at AAA Worcester and just focus on getting on base. And it's like the same thing too with like Verdugo. Like if these guys can hit home runs, let it be organic. Don't let it be forced. Don't let it be something that they feel the need to go and do that. They have people in that lineup that can do that. JD can hit home runs. That's Raffy's going to hit home runs. So with Duran, yeah, it's cool. It's nice. You get to see your highlight on Twitter. You get to see your highlight on Instagram. I think Duran's just going to focus on getting on base. He gets on base and tries to focus on being like a 280 hitter. And then the pop just happens to be there. And he's generating on-base opportunities. And, I'd rather see his runs total of runs scored be a lot higher than the amount of home runs that he's trying to jack out of that park. So I think most importantly, though, is hopefully the kid can go back to having fun because it's fun to watch him. It was kind of, when I read it, it was just kind of like, oh, man, like that kind of sucks. Like here's a player that, has, again, future is super bright. And he's just like, he let that hype kind of, I think, get to him too much.
And I think too that will come as he matures a little bit as a player and as a person where you learn to just kind of block out that outside noise. And you mentioned some other areas of need that the Red Sox may need some help in, like particularly right field. Are there any other areas of need where you think this team should improve either right before opening day or maybe right after?
I just continue to get pitching. And, I think at this point it's going to be quantity over quality. Of the style of player. Like I would be completely shocked if they went out and made a trade with Oakland right now. I don't know if there's going to be a team that will, unless it's like, that's going to completely overpay for one of these players. So I'd like for them to continue to go ahead and take flyers like they did with Derek Holland. That's a flyer on a player that even if he can give you innings, at some point, they're going to need that. It's a grind of a season. So, and continue to get more for the bullpen piece. Like I'm still nervous about Matt Barnes. I'm not sold on him just yet, being, there's been nothing for us to see since the end of last season that he's going to be able to correct whatever issues that he had to be so erratic in the pen towards the end of the season. So I would have loved to have seen them address and add even more depth to that back piece. But for me, just keep getting more arms.
Yeah, when you mentioned quantity over quality, Derek Holland was definitely the first name that I thought of. That's when the signing was announced. That's what I said on here. Is I think it's more of a depth piece, and I think that's why we saw Heim get Rich Hill, James Paxton. A lot of people forget about he's on the team as well as Michael Wacha. I think another name that I saw on Oakland that it would be interesting if they try and move him is Lou Trevino. Their closer over there. I agree. I don't really 100% trust Barnes myself, and I think it would be nice if they were able to take that workload off of him a little bit and just maybe have like two options. Like Barnes, gets righties. Somebody else gets lefties or whatever. You know what I mean? Because we saw the amount of appearances that he made in the first half and how much that hurt him in the second half.
It always feels like that. Like Alex Cora completely overuses him. So hopefully there's a change too with like, the philosophy and how they're going to utilize him, because they used the last handful of seasons, like they've used him a lot, especially towards the beginning of the season. So I think what'll be helpful is that, if he can get a big save in Yankee Stadium to kick off the season, even like the first game of the season, get that save and, in that environment, in that climate with that crowd. And people are going to be amped up as it is coming off of, Yankee fans seeing their team get bounced in that first game playoff. And, if he's able to get the save, then I think that's going to be a huge confidence builder. So, but still, I still think that that's going to be something they're going to have to address, adding more depth back there. And getting Hansel Robles was cool. Bringing him back, it's cheap money and it's, low risk, high reward. I don't know that the Sox would have made the playoffs without Hansel Robles. Actually, it's crazy to say that because he filled in when needed to be. I wouldn't say he wasn't dominant, but he was definitely serviceable towards that late run. So, but yeah, I'm hopeful that Matt Barnes can bring it back, but I need to see it.
Very true. And last thing for you, Chris, what is your record prediction for the 2022 Red Sox?
It's gonna be a tough division. It's gonna be tough. Toronto is they're loaded. Their starting pitching is loaded. Their offense is loaded. I think that's the cream of the crop within the division if you're just looking at it on paper. I still think that the Red Sox, with the expanded playoffs, I think they're a playoff team. I think they could finish in second place. I think anything less than 90 wins would be a disappointment. Yep. And I'm gonna start with the 90 piece only because of the fact that Chris Sale's on the IL, going to start it out that way, and we really don't know how long he's going to be out for. So when he comes back, that's an added bump for the team. But even just kind of thinking about it too, is 90 wins good enough for second place? The Rays are still, until the Rays fall off the face of the earth, no matter what they do and how their roster looks, I still think you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Baltimore is still, they're building. They're not there yet. And I don't know. I'm not super confident with the Yankees pitching. And I don't know if they have the ability to go out and make the moves, but I just don't know if they have enough pieces from a pitching standpoint. So I know a lot of people said the Red Sox maybe third or fourth place. I think second place, and anything less than 90 wins would be disappointing.
Very true. And, we saw the predictions last season, and there's a lot of people who were wrong. So, especially with this Story signing, and, I think the energy and the chemistry that this team has is going to help them really separate themselves from other teams. And I think it's going to really help them be able to get some of those tough wins, especially when they're close. But really appreciate you taking the time today, Chris. For anybody that wants to support you, read your stuff, support the podcast, where can they find all that?
So you can follow me. So it's at Chris Henrique. And then if you're looking for Sox content, so the Beyond the Monster, I'm super excited to see how that Twitter handle continue to grow with the full season coming up. But that's Beyond and then it's Monster, but you got to drop the ER. I mean, the E before the R. And there's a link tree too in my bio, and you can see all of the different Twitter handles that's attached to that. So I'm excited to engage Red Sox fans in multiple different ways this coming season.
Yeah, definitely go and follow Chris over there. He also has Sox Dingers, Sox Specs, I believe, as well. He does a great job of covering all the different aspects of the Boston Red Sox. So definitely go and check him out over there. Really appreciate you taking the time today, Chris. And lastly, go Sox. We hope that you did enjoy our conversation with Chris Henrique, but we want to hear your guys' thoughts on the introductory press conference with Trevor Story. So if you don't yet, go over and follow Locked On Red Sox on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox, because we want to be the most engaging Red Sox podcast there is out there. So we want to hear your thoughts on what is going on around the team. So if you have not yet, make sure to go over and follow us there. Also follow myself on Twitter. It's at Jake Iggy, as well as my co-host Lauren. That's 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But I want to thank everybody so much again for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, brings you his unique perspective on the major leagues past and present. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And as I mentioned before, what's also free as well and available wherever you get your podcasts is all the other Locked On podcasts that are on the Locked On network, because they do a great job of giving you tons of information about either it's about a specific team, a specific league. So definitely go and check out the other Locked On podcasts for whatever your favorite teams are. And also get ready for tomorrow's episode because we have a very, very special guest, but I'm not going to give you any sneak peeks. I'm going to allow you to get ready and excited for tomorrow's episode because you definitely don't want to miss it. And if you have not yet, subscribe on whatever audio platform that you're listening to, or also on YouTube if you're watching the video version, because we try our best to give you guys exciting and entertaining Red Sox content and to also put out the best information possible to help you be a very knowledgeable Red Sox fan. So make sure to subscribe because we post Monday through Friday in baseball, and the Red Sox are back, baby, and we couldn't be more excited. But as always, greatly appreciate all the support that you guys give us on a daily basis. Be well, take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you guys and see you guys tomorrow. Peace.